Good morning, folks. My name is Brian Baker, Rail Logistics Manager at PFL. We are live at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday. If you are viewing this podcast through our reports and are up early on Mondays, please tune in next week live instead. Follow us on LinkedIn for an opportunity to win a PFLX Railcar. Our weekly quote this week is from Miguel de Unamuno. Miguel de Unamuno was a Spanish essayist, novelist, poet, playwright, philosopher, professor of Greek and classics, and later director at the University of Salamanca. Miguel once said, "Only he who attempts the absurd is capable of achieving the impossible." We, of course, really like this one, folks. It makes a lot of sense. You can't ask someone to do the impossible unless he first tries the absurd. Here at PFL, we try the impossible every day, searching high and low for unicorns for our customers. So this one hits home. And you know what? Every once in a while, we find that unicorn. New U.S. jobless claims. The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell to 779,000 people last week. The job market ended 2020 with no momentum and gained only a small amount back to start 2021. The Bureau of Labor Statistics announced on Friday of last week that 49,000 net new jobs were created in January 2021. Estimates range from the minus 200,000 to gain of plus 400,000, underscoring the uncertainty the pandemic and state shutdowns have created. Job losses for December 2020 were revised from 140,000 last month to minus 227,000 this month. January 2021 small job gains means that of the 22.4 million jobs lost in March and April 2020, 12.4 million have been recovered, leaving 9.9 million Americans still unemployed. The Dow closed higher on Friday of last week, up plus 92.38 points, closing out the week at 31,148.24 points, up 1,165.62 points week over week. The S&P 500 closed higher on Friday of last week, up 15.09 points, and closing out the week at 3,886.83 points, up 172.59 points week over week. The Nasdaq also closed higher on Friday of last week, up 78.5 points, closing out the week at 13,856.3 points, up 785.61 points week over week. In overnight trading, Dow futures traded higher and are expected to open up this morning at 92 points. Oil prices hit its highest level in a year on Friday of last week, closing in on $60 a barrel, supported by economic revival, hopes, and supply curbs by producer group OPEC and its allies. Oil was also supported as a U.S. stock market hit record highs on signs of progress towards more economic stimulus. While a closely watched jobs report confirmed the labor market was stabilizing, WTI crude oil for March delivery rose 62 cents to 56.85 a barrel, up Friday of last week $4.35 per barrel week over week. Brent crude oil for April delivery rose 50 cents to $59.34 a barrel. Friday of last week, up $4.30 per barrel week over week. U.S. commercial crude oil inventories decreased by 1.0 million barrels week over week at 475.7 million barrels U.S. Crude oil inventories are 4% above the 5-year average for this time of year. Total motor gasoline inventories increased by 4.5 million barrels last week and are on 1% below the 5-year average for this time of the year. Finished gasoline inventories decreased while blending components inventories increased last week. Distillate fuel inventories were virtually unchanged last week and are 8% above the 5-year average for this time of year. Propane and propylene inventories decreased by 1.6 million barrels last week and are 6% below the 5-year average for this time of year. Total commercial petroleum inventories increased by 2.9 million barrels last week. U.S. crude oil imports averaged 6.5 million barrels per day last week, an increase of 1.4 million barrels per day from the previous week. Over the past 4 weeks, crude oil imports averaged 6 million barrels per day, 9.2% less than the same 4-week period last year. Total motor gasoline imports, including both finished gasoline and gasoline blending components last week, averaged 568,000 barrels per day. And distillate fuel imports averaged 518,000 barrels per day. Oil is higher in overnight trading, and WTI is poised to open up at 57.43 points, up 58 cents per barrel from Friday's close. Total North American rail volumes were up 0.7% year over year in week 4, resulting in a year-to-date volumes that are up 4.9% year over year. 4 of the AAR's 11 major traffic categories posted year-over-year increase, with the largest increase coming from intermodal, plus 4.7%, and grain, plus 38.84%. The largest decrease came from coal at minus 8.9%. North America rig count is up by 5 rigs week over week. The U.S. gained 8 rigs week over week. The U.S. currently has 392 active rigs. Canada's rig count was down 3 rigs week over week, and Canada's overall rig count is 171 active rigs. Year over year, we are down 484 rigs collectively. A few things we are keeping an eye on. We are watching railcars in storage as they continue to decline month over month and now are below pre-pandemic levels. As of February 1st, 2021, 396,867 freight cars, or 24% of the 1.656 million unit North American rail freight car fleet, is now in storage. Please visit PFL's just released storage report for a detailed analysis of railcar in storage across the country. Petroleum by rail. The 4-week rolling average of petroleum carloads carried on the 6 largest North American railroads rose to 27,892 from 27,405 week over week. Canadian volumes were mixed. CP shipments rose by 2.2%, and CN volumes were down by 8.7%. U.S. railroad operators were mostly lower. BN had the largest percentage loss, down by 15.9%. We are watching this week some key economic indicators just released. U.S. gross domestic product. The U.S. GDP increased by a preliminary 4% in Q4 2020, according to the first estimate released by Bureau of Economic Analysis on January 28th. On an annual basis, GDP fell 3.5% in 2020, its first decline since 2009. GDP estimates from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta says GDP will grow an annualized 4.6% in Q1 2021. The number of people employed is projected to return to its pre-pandemic levels in 2024. Industrial output and capacity utilization. Seasonally adjusted total U.S. industrial output rose a preliminary 1.6% in December 2020 from November 2020. Its biggest month-to-month gain in 5 months and 7th gain in the past 8 months. However, even after these increases, total output in December 2020 was still 3.6% lower than it was a year earlier and 3.3% below the pre-pandemic February 2020 level. Consumer confidence. The Conference Board's index of consumer confidence improved slightly to 89.3 in January 2021 from a revised 87.1 in December 2020 after plummeting last spring. The index rose above 100 in September and October before falling to where it is now. The University of Michigan's index for consumer sentiment went in the opposite direction in January, falling to 79 from 80.7 in December. The overall level of the index has averaged 81.5 throughout the pandemic, well below the average of the 97 from 2017 and 2019, and well below confidence exhibited during Trump years in office. Consumer spending. U.S. consumer spending fell a preliminary 0.2% in December 2020 from November 2020, following revised 0.7% drop in November from October. Spending tanked in March and April, recovered strongly in May and June, but has since petered out. Retail sales, which are essentially a subset of total consumer spending, had a similar pattern. They fell 0.7% in December from November, their third straight month-to-month decline after growing each month from May to September, following a sharp decline in April. The spending numbers were worse than most economists expected and reflect a stalling economy due to a surge in coronavirus cases and restrictions imposed to suppress them. For more and more details as it relates to the country's economic condition, please read today's Rail Report. That's all for this week's podcast. We hope you have a great, safe week, and we will see you next Monday. PFL has been extremely active in storage and rail-related activities. Make sure to check out our just posted reports at www.pflpetroleum.com or call PFL to troubleshoot any questions or concerns you may have at 239-390-2888.